Hello, everyone. This is MMA Interesting Prospects podcast. Today, our guest is undefeated welterweight prospect Max Metzgar. Hello, Max. How are you?
Doing good, bro. How are you doing? Good. Thanks for having me on here.
Thanks for taking the invitation. And about 5 weeks ago, you defeated another opponent. Right now, you are 4-0. I think that right now you are one of the most interesting guys on the in the welterweight division on the regional scene because you never lost a fight. And if you can tell me, how do you feel about your last fight against opponent that I think that is a really good one because he got a lot of experience.
Yeah, absolutely, bro. I've been fighting at welterweight for the past few fights, but really, I think I'm a lightweight. I think I'm going to be fighting at 155 again very soon. I walk around at about 186, 187 pounds. If I'm, um, you know, I was actually trying to eat up a bit to be competing at welterweight. I was trying to get up to about 190, 191, 193. And I've never been heavier than that before, and most of the fighters that compete at the higher level in the UFC, that are at welterweight walk around 200 pounds plus. So I've been fighting at welterweight for the first few fights here of my professional career just because I'm able to fight quickly back to back. I don't have to do the weight cut. But now, 4-0, I'm getting to the point now where the level of competition is only going to continue to get higher and higher, and I'm going to have to go back down to my natural weight class, which is 155. It's been good to compete at 170. I think, my thought process was if I'm really as good as I think I am, I should be able to compete up a weight class. Um, and I do take pride in that. I do think it's been something that really kind of highlights my level of skill that I can compete up a weight class and finish fighters by submission, by knockout, up a weight class. I don't see any other fighters, doing that. I don't see any other fighters competing up a weight class, finishing their opponents. So I think it's been really good experience, and I think when I go back down to 155, um, I'm gonna be a lot. I'm gonna be more dominant than I have been at 170. At 170, both of my past fights have gone 3 rounds. Um, I got the finish. I got the knockout in the third round of my last fight. The fight before that, I went the distance. Um, and I just don't see that happening at 155 pounds. I think at 155 pounds, I'll be getting people out of there in the first round or in the second round. I'm the smaller man in all the matchups that I've had recently at 170 pounds. I have a smaller bone structure, and I'm the smaller fighter. But due to my skill and my tactics, I've been able to go out there and get the wins. But like I said, going back down to 155, I think I'll be substantially more dominant than at 170.
So this was the reason why you could take so many fights last year. From May to December, you got 3 fights. So it's actually a lot in this kind of level because its level, it's on the regional scene is quite high.
Absolutely, yeah. 4 fights in 11 months, I think is what it was for my last fight. It was my fourth fight in the past 11 months. I'm looking to get another fight in again here in the next couple of weeks and try to make it 5 fights in one calendar year. I'm not sure if you're aware of this or not, but I was signed to Bellator to make my professional debut, and obviously Bellator no longer exists. I'm really not even sure what happened. I believe that they went bankrupt. But I was out for all that time. I didn't compete at all for 18 months. Um, and through that entire time, I was training, just like I was in camp. I was training the entire time, hoping that something would come short notice. And I was just staying ready. They had all these different cards that were happening overseas, that were happening in the United States. And, they kept kind of telling me, we might put you on this one, we might put you on that one for about 18 months. So it was 18 months of me just staying in the gym, staying ready. And I was able to develop my skills a lot in that time. So I'm not, I'm trying to look at everything as the glass is half full, not half empty. I was able to really develop my skills in that 18 months, but obviously I wasn't able to advance my career in terms of getting wins. So that's been a big part of why I've been competing at 170 is I'm able to bang these fights out quickly because the weight cut doesn't really deplete me very much. And I don't want to be cutting all that weight for no money. You know what I mean? And now that we're starting to head up to the higher level where I'm probably going to be fighting for LFA soon, I'm starting to headline main events on these regional shows. I'm making a little bit more money. It's going to start to make sense here soon to go back down to 155. And I'm not excited for the weight cut, but I am excited to compete at that weight class again. I really do feel like at 155, I don't think that there's anybody in the world that's not in the top 15 of the UFC, or that's a very, very experienced, 15, 20 fights into their professional career that can hang with me. So I'm excited to drop back down and to see where we stand at my real weight class.
What happened with the Bellator fight? Because I remember that at that point you were one of the best amateur fighters in US, and it was actually a really really cool thing that you was supposed to make your pro debut in the Bellator, but in the end the fight didn't happen. So what was the like reason?
Yeah, you mean the fight that got canceled, the one that was
Yes,
made
yes.
that the guy pulled out of? Yeah, I was packing my bags. I had my bags packed. I was doing one last errand to pick something up before I headed to the airport. Um, and Bellator texted me and said that my opponent had pulled out, that he injured his ankle. They said that he injured his ankle and that he got a X-ray and that he hurt his ankle somehow in training, and that he had to pull out, and that was it. That was it.
But it would be like also a good thing if Bellator would give you in like 2023 another chance because I think that who knows, maybe you would be like 4-0 in Bellator, and it would like open other doors for you. But in the end I think that still you are in a very very good position right now.
Yeah, it would have been nice. You know what I mean? Bellator, honestly, they took pretty good care of me. They still paid me my show money. Obviously didn't get the win bonus, but they were still took care of me in the sense of they, paid me the money that was on the contract. But yeah, I would have loved to fill out that contract with Bellator. I think I'd be in a much better position than I'm in now. But it is what it is. You know what I mean? Everything happens for a reason. I continue to put my faith in God and put one foot in front of the other and just keep doing my best and, keep faith that this is all going to work out exactly the way that it's meant to. And, that's all that we can do. And that's what I live every day.
And what was like initial reason for you to go to train MMA and then decided to go amateur and pro?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a long story. I wrestled my whole life. Um, I never reached the highest level of my capabilities as a wrestler by myself. I wrestled for one of the premier um, high school wrestling teams in the nation. We won state 3 times. We were the first team in Illinois history to be national champions. And I had a bunch of guys that were starting on the team in front of me, that later would go on to be NCAA D1 All Americans, Olympians, guys like Kamal Bay, Isaiah White, Larry Early, were all guys that started over me that had came in from out of town to wrestle for my high school team, and I just grew up there. You know what I mean? So these guys were kind of groomed to be wrestlers. Their parents stuck them in wrestling at a young age. Were taking them to camps. I was just a regular dude who found wrestling. But I kind of had that hunger in me to where I still felt like I wanted to see how far I could really take it, and I never really had that opportunity. So that was always something that was kind of in the back of my mind, was that I almost had, some stones that never got turned over in the realm of, athletic competition. But what really did it was what did it being, made me embark on this journey was just um, not being content with the direction that my life was headed in. I graduated from college. I was, had all these different internships in college. I went to Ohio State. Um, I was in the job interviewing process for all these different jobs, and I was going to end up doing something that just didn't feel like it was going to nourish my soul in a way that would be really fulfilling, and something that I really, was looking forward to doing when I woke up every day to go out there in the world and go do what go to work. And I know that that's something that a lot of people deal with. You know what I mean? That's what work is. You know what I mean? Work's not always going to be fun, but it is something that I need to be fulfilling. I need the work that I'm doing to be something that I feel like is moving the needle in an impactful way, and to be chasing something that is worthwhile, and something that's hard, and something that is, you know, a big lofty goal. You know what I mean? As a 21-year-old, when I graduated from college, I felt like I wanted to take a riskier path, something that had, the upside and the potential to really be outstanding and great, and chase greatness, instead of settling for a job that would be comfortable and that would pay the bills, and something that was good and secure. I know that I can always go back to that. I have my college degree. If at any stage, this no longer is what's in the cards for me, for whatever reason, I have the ability to lean back on my education and lean back on my skills as an entrepreneur. But right now, in my 20s, I want to see how far I could take this, and see, how far I can really go, chasing greatness. Um, that's how I got into it. I was doing all these different odd jobs, trying to provide for myself, working in a restaurant. I was working in an airport, in the airfield, moving freight. I was doing all kinds of different odd jobs right after I graduated from college, and I was gonna start working as a ticket sales representative for the Chicago Cubs the day before the pandemic started with COVID-19. So it all kind of happened all at once, and it just felt like in my heart I knew that I wanted to be going in a different direction than the momentum that was carrying my life. It was my all at one time. It was my 23rd, or maybe my 22nd birthday. I had a job interview to start my new job with the Cubs as a ticket sales representative, and the COVID-19 pandemic all started in the same week. That all happened in the same week, and when the pandemic started, I just, we were like a week into it, 2 weeks into it, and I had already kind of developed a bit of a passion for martial arts recently. I had started watching the UFC, and I had became very, very, very fascinated by martial arts and by movement and utilizing the body as a weapon, and just primal movement. I remember there were just a certain number of times where I was watching the UFC, and I just felt like the way that I was watching some of these strikers and even the grapplers, the way I was watching them move their body, I remember being so inspired and just feeling like it was one of the most beautiful things I had ever seen. Just a raw expression of not violence, but just a raw expression of movement, a raw expression of what the body is capable of and balance. And I had began to become really inspired by that and really look at that art form as something that was really beautiful. And I had started to kind of, dabble in it a little bit before I graduated from college. I took a couple Muay Thai classes. I did one Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournament that I entered into with very little experience. Um, and then when the pandemic started, like I said, I was going through this kind of mental shift in my life. Growing up on the wrestling team, number one in the nation, everything was always about balls to the wall, working as hard as you can to make your dreams come true. And I had graduated from college, and that intensity of chasing something was always something that had really fueled me and propelled me. And now that I had graduated from college and I had this job that was kind of just felt stale, I didn't have that kind of vision or dream that I was chasing. And I just wasn't ready to settle for something like that. So I decided, with the opportunity that the pandemic had provided, just to completely pivot and change direction that everything was going. And I moved back from Chicago. I moved back to Columbus, Ohio. I got a job working in a factory, making $25 an hour, working in a factory and training as much as I possibly could. And, I continued to do that. And then I got a job at a restaurant, which gave me a little bit more flexible hours. I started doing private lessons with other aspiring martial artists once I had won a couple championships as an amateur. And then ultimately, when I signed with Bellator, I ended up quitting my job at the restaurant, invested all of my time into what was supposed to be making money as a professional MMA fighter with Bellator, because they pay you good. You can make a living wage doing that. But when that didn't happen, because of all the things that we already said, I didn't get any fights. I really took that time to double down on my own business as a personal trainer and with my own MMA team. So I have my own MMA team now of about 12 amateur MMA fighters. And then I have a personal training business where I help people, maximize their potential through proper nutrition, exercise, mental, just trying to get people into the ability to perform at their highest level and feel their best. So that's the long answer to your question.
And actually, this story can be used as the motivation for other people, that sometimes
Yeah,
is good to risk something, go for your dreams, challenge yourself. Because of course, maybe it will be success, maybe not, but probably this is worth to take some risk, to see how far you can go, to challenge yourself, and to see maybe you will be able to go for this dream and live this like best life that you can have.
absolutely. And I'm of the mind frame that life is a journey of exploration, of coming to know yourself and coming to know, whatever you want to call the thing external, coming to know the universe, coming to know the world, coming to know God. But the life is kind of just a journey, man, and it's just about learning and experiencing all that life has to give you. And no matter what happens, this experience, and I think I'm still just in the beginning phases of this experience, but just the things that I've lived and experienced and learned about myself and learned about life, um, is invaluable. You know what I mean? And I don't think for everybody the dream has to be to chase your dream of being an MMA fighter, but everybody has some kind of dream, right? Everybody has some kind of calling that whispers to them at 1 in the morning of, this passion, this interest that they're have a natural inclination towards. And, some people might never have the chance to do it because maybe they had children when they were very young, or, maybe they have to take care of their sick parents, or something like that. But somebody like me that had the opportunity to really go after it and go chase it, it just seemed like it would be such a shame to settle for less and to never know the truth. You know what I mean? Sometimes one of the things I like to think about is all my ancestors that came here before me, all the men and women, all the men that, lived their lives to bring me to this point from my bloodline, um, that, suffered and sacrificed so much in times when things were so much more unsettled and unsure. Um, you know, I don't think that they did all of that just so I could sit at home and watch Hulu and eat ice cream after work. You know what I mean? I want to do something that is going to be, something that's worthwhile, something that's going to continue to have a legacy and ripples throughout time that will positively impact the lives of other people. Once I'm done fighting, when I'm 35 or 36, my dream is to have my own martial arts gym and, have a youth program and, allow other people to experience martial arts. I think the martial arts is, you know, even if you're just a kid doing jujitsu or even if you're just a high school wrestler, I think the martial arts is such a powerful tool to just come to know yourself. You know what I mean? It's hard to really even put into words, but there's something about competition, particularly by yourself, and refining a specific set of skills, putting those skills to the test, and then coming back to the drawing board after a loss or after victory and learning how to handle victory and learning how to handle defeat and managing your emotions under highly stressful situations. And, there's just so much that goes into martial arts, and that's why I love it so much. I always kind of break it down that there's fighting and then there's martial arts. And fighting is about winning, it's about money, it's about expressing your art form. It's about competition. But martial arts is a lifestyle, and martial arts is about there's all these things that I've said about learning about your journey as a human, about philosophy. Um, yeah, man.
And you mentioned before the like movement part of MMA. And in your opinion, who is like the maybe your favorite fighter? If we are talking about movement, but in the stand-up department.
Yeah, that's a great question, man. Currently, I really like Mauricio Ruffy. I like Gene Silva, two guys from the Fighting Nerds. I think that their whole team kind of leans towards that more intuitive, rhythmic, you might even say feminine aspect of fighting. This aspect of it where you're able to kind of just where it's not just banging your fucking heads together, where there's it's more of a flow, more of a rhythm, where you're able to pick your shots. And yeah, I think that both of those guys right now are probably two of my favorite fighters just in terms of movement. But the guy who started it all is obviously McGregor. You know what I mean? The guy that started it all when it comes to just the pure raw expression of moving the body in a way that is um, pure, was McGregor. You know what I mean? I think that a big part of the reason that I even got started in this was the inspiration that I drew from him. Um, yeah, it's not something that I really like to talk about for some reason. It's almost a thing that's kind of like shameful almost to be like a Conor McGregor fan, because Conor McGregor is like the face of MMA. Everybody's a Conor McGregor fan or they hate him. And it makes me sad to see how he's kind of fallen away from the core values and principles, at least looking in to his life from a phone screen. It would appear that he's kind of moved away from the more uh, humble and stoic and mindful aspects of what makes a martial artist a martial artist. But who knows? You know what I mean? He's going to court, and you just see him in interviews looking like he's just not in the best mental place. But when he was coming up, in the prime of his career, he was a very inspirational person and was somebody that showed us, what is possible whenever you truly believe and you truly dedicate yourself to something. And, the thing that I think really makes him special was kind of like this almost supernatural ability to believe and therefore, make the world around you conform to that belief and that faith. You know what I mean? Faith is something that you can't lie to yourself about. You either have faith or you don't, and no matter how it looks on the outside, there's something in there that you just feel when you truly have faith in what you're doing and the way that something is going to unfold. And that in and of itself is a superpower. And I think that the more even the average person can lean on faith, it's just such a powerful thing. And it's such a hard thing to teach somebody. It's really something that you have to learn on your own. But yeah, when it comes to the movement, the pure beauty of martial arts and movement, I think Mauricio Ruffili is probably my favorite guy right now.
And about Connor, of course, maybe he's not the best example in 2025, but 2014, 2015, I think that he inspired a lot of people because he came maybe not from the nowhere, but he was not super known when he get to the UFC and he beat so many guys in a very short time, including like Josaldo in 13 seconds, which is like still super crazy thing. And in the end, I think that there will be hard to beat him as far as the brand that he
Yeah,
created in the sport.
absolutely. Yeah, no doubt about it. That's one of the things that I think kind of goes over a lot of fighters' heads, or maybe that a lot of fighters kind of feel some kind of internal resistance to the showmanship aspect of the sport. Um, and I don't know, I think for a lot of people it comes natural, maybe they have more of an outgoing personality. I certainly do. I've always been a very outgoing and maybe colorful individual, kind of like, what you might think of Sean O'Malley, where it just is more naturally who they are. You know what I mean? Just self-expression as an artist, of looking to express yourself and having that kind of desire and that need to express yourself, whereas that probably doesn't really come naturally or feel natural to somebody that's more reserved or somebody that's more um, of an introvert. But it's all about the brand, man. At the end of the day, the only reason that we're getting paid to do this is because people are choosing to spend their money to buy pay-per-views, or you know they're investing their time watching us compete. And a lot of these guys from Dagestan, like I'm watching the PFL tournament from last night right now. A lot of these guys are just so boring. They have a very high level of skill. Their fighting style oftentimes is kind of boring, but even if they have a relatively exciting fighting style, if you have no personality, if you have nothing that fans can like connect with and have some kind of an emotionally elicited response to, um, you're just not as marketable. And, it's something that I've kind of juggled back and forth in my head, is like, just because you never want to be inauthentic to yourself. You have to stay truly authentic to yourself at all times through everything in life. But, that's what I think is kind of weird for a lot of fighters, is guys want to be marketable, but then they're like acting out of character. So it's a unique thing. You mean you want to be yourself, but it's almost like you want to be yourself magnified. You just want to act like more of yourself, to where you're really, confident about just showing up as yourself in a very almost magnified way. And that feels kind of hard to do sometimes, especially if you have any kind of insecurities about yourself. Then it's really hard to kind of show everybody who you are, and even maybe overdo it. So that's where things get kind of interesting. Is it's almost like a spiritual. You have to be like in alignment with who you are, and believe, to be able to even show up and present yourself in that kind of confident light, to where you're able to be vulnerable and just express yourself. Um, it's hard to do that if you don't really know who you are and don't really know, what you think and feel about certain things. If you have certain loose ends in your head that are still untied, these big questions that you have or ways that you view the world that you're not sure about, it becomes hard to do that. Um, and I think one of the things that I was doing before I was doing MMA was I was really really deep into the just philosophy. I was minoring in philosophy when I was in college. I was studying different religions in my free time. Um, I did a lot of deep dives into Eastern religion because I don't know. When I was in my early 20s, I felt like everybody around me was worried about having fun and drinking, and I was doing all of that shit too. But I felt this like emptiness. I felt this very deep sadness and like hollowness in my heart that I just didn't know what to do with. I didn't. I would try to talk to my father about it maybe, but at the end of the day, nobody can help you with your life's purpose and your relationship with the world. You know what I mean? It's you and your relationship with God or whatever you want to call it. Um, but I was in such like turmoil in myself, just trying to figure out my own values and my own, my understanding of my role in the world and purpose and trying to answer these questions. Um, and I always wondered, like, do other people have those same kinds of questions and then just choose not to lean into that and dig into that and try to do the hard work to answer those questions for themselves? Do they choose to just go drink or just go get high and or maybe just turn on the TV instead of sitting with those things and trying to really do the research to dive deep into unraveling the layers of yourself? And I just couldn't do that anymore. I felt like everybody around me was like wanted to party and just kind of just like go with the flow. And I saw where going with the flow takes you. It takes you to a job that you don't love, which takes you to go into the bar after work, which takes you to shallow relationships. And it's just this cycle that I saw the direction that my life was heading if I continued to just go with the crowd. Um, and I think that awareness comes a lot from wrestling my whole life and the culture of wrestling, but then, also my relationship with my father and with my grandfather. My grandfather was a PhD in philosophy, and you know, we've always just kind of had these really, deep conversations that I think a lot of people aren't fortunate enough to have to unravel these uncomfortable, complex things. A lot of people I think don't have, a lot of young men don't have other men in their life that they feel comfortable really unpackaging these deep philosophical questions with. And, I was fortunate enough to have that. Um, and, that's a lot of what this is about for me is, one day. And even now, you know what I mean? Like I got a kid on my MMA team I just took out to get coffee right now and talk to him about how his life's going and his struggles as a young man. And that I think that's what this really is all about is just your life's journey and helping other people along in their life's journey. And that's just what I'm about. Spending your time in a good, meaningful way, spending your time in a way that seems important and seems valuable. Not allowing yourself to just go with the flow and end up in some place that you didn't really fucking set sail to get to. If you don't set sail and know where you're going, or at least know the direction that you're heading in, the current will just take you. And if you let the current just take you, you end up living a life that isn't really yours. And that's what I was always deeply afraid of was, not living my life on my own terms.
Okay, Max. So many thanks for the time and for conversation.
Yeah, of
I hope that
course.
that you will be back in the cage soon, and with the few more wins you will get to the UFC.
I appreciate it, brother. Thank you very much. We flew through that, huh? That was quick. It
That's
seems
right.
quick. It was about 40 minutes though. Yeah, thanks to you though, man, for giving us all a platform to continue to grow our brands. We need more journalists like you that, pay attention to the sport and that give us a platform. So thank you for your time, and I really appreciate you having me on here.